So, ding, I'm Bill Graham. I'm the president of the Rotary Dare to Be Great Global E-Club, and I declare this meeting on 27 June 2026 to be open. The Dare to Be Great Rotary E-Club is the go-to place for those who are crazy enough to think they can change the world, the whole world, and daring enough to try. Okay, today's meeting is actually perhaps more important than it might appear at first glance. We have been talking or trying to talk about projects. What can we do? How can we have impact in the world in recent meetings? Some of those have been sort of refocused because of changes that are happening in the world that we believe have significant impact, especially with regards to artificial intelligence. So, but today, one of the things that came up in this last one is, okay, well, what's the modus operandi of our club? How do we think we can have impact in the world? Because that determines the nature of our projects, because our projects are designed to help us do the things we do to have impact in the world. And until now, well, one of the things I have to do, and I'm sorry here if Jay is here, because he sort of says, well, we spent a lot of time regurgitating the same information in every meeting. But I think for today's meeting especially, it's important to point out, like every Rotary Club, we seek to be of the greatest service to our community. A difference is, however, that since we have members around the world, our community is the world, the whole world. And then what do we mean by service? In our particular case, we believe the greatest service that we can be to our community, the world, is to help our community avoid severe and potentially existential consequences of major problems facing the world. In other words, we've got to look to see, how do we solve all the world's major problems? And of course, that qualifies us. That sort of is the definition of crazy, I guess. But the reason we have to address all the problems is we don't know which of these problems is going to become the most serious problem for our world. And if we don't focus on the one that is potentially existential, that's our fault then. So we don't know for sure, so we have to address them all. Now, how can a little group of people come and say, we're going to go and fix the world. We're going to go and change all the parts of the world. We realize we can't do that. We're not going to go out and all go get some shovels and let's start fixing the world. So what we can do, however, is we can facilitate bringing together the best brains to effectively address the problems, to figure out what are the causes of the problems, figure out what solutions have the best opportunity of addressing those problems, and even figuring out how do we overcome obstacles to implementing those solutions. So that's the first arm, if you would, or leg of our approach, is to try to facilitate bringing the people together that can solve the problems, come up with the solutions to the problem. The second part here is to help facilitate the implementation, is to be an influencer, to work to influence those people of influence in the world who are in a position to bring about the changes that we need, the solutions that we need to address the problems. Because very often it's not that we don't know what needs to be done, but we have a huge problem bringing the will together to do them. And we see here that in the past 3 years, roughly, every summer at the high-level political forums at the United Nations, they've been pointing out how far off track we are to addressing the major problems that are facing the world. And right now, last year, and we'll hear maybe next month some more, but last year they were pointing out there are twice as many of the SDG targets that have actually made zero progress or gone backwards since 2015 when they were announced than have any chance of being achieved. And almost every one of the ones that has a chance to being achieved is not a major problem. They're the minor ones. They're not the ones that are going to make a significant difference in the world. All the ones that are really crucial to our well-being and existence are the ones that are not making any progress or that are falling behind. Now, in the last week, one of the last couple of weeks, a new opportunity came along. We might declare this to be a third modus operandi, if you would. And that is, can we have more direct influence? Can we help be an organizer to the organizers of the world? In other words, we have groups like Congo or co-NGO, the Conference of NGOs at the United Nations, who are looking to see how can we use artificial intelligence and technology to make civil society more effective in working with the UN. And that has two folds. Originally, when Congo was created, it actually was right in the beginning charter of the UN that civil society would have to play a major role. But just 2 years after the founding of the UN, the Conference of NGOs was established. Now, initially, that was to facilitate NGOs being able to interact with the UN more from the point of them being able to advise the UN. That's why Congo or the UN established civil society as NGOs that are in consultative status to the UN. But more recently, the UN has been looking at it and saying, hey, we need civil society to help implement what's needed to achieve the SDGs. There's the greatest number, more than half of the SDGs targets cannot be achieved without the broad behavioral changes of the general population of the world. In other words, they're not things that the member states can do on their own, like passing laws or establishing budgets and things like that. That's only a relatively small percent of the SDG targets can be achieved by the member states in that fashion. And many of those have actually been achieved on paper, but actually causing real change on the ground, the member states have not been very successful doing that. And in fact, where NGOs get engaged, they are often more effective in bringing about the change on the ground than the governments of the member states themselves. So we just had a recent change in the leadership of Congo. And one of the things that I'm doing is I'm working together with a group that is looking to see how does an association like Congo add value? We create a group because that group should add some kind of value to all the individuals who are members. If they're not, why have a group? So the question is, how can an association like Congo add greater value to its member components? Now, Congo, the way they function is they establish committees for different causes. It could be SDGs or groups of SDGs or other major concerns related to the UN. So the question is, okay, is there a way we can improve on the effectiveness of these committees in establishing whatever their goals are? Until now, very often these committees are just places that bring people together maybe once a month or so, and they talk about the problems or they have some interesting speaker, but we're not seeing a lot of collaboration on what to do about things. If we look at the UN itself, and we have the various committees in the UN who discuss problems and they pass resolutions, and those resolutions then get passed to the member states that make promises or pledges to do certain things. The Congo has a very limited ability to submit resolution drafts to the standing committees at the UN, but that doesn't actually do anything because it's just a resolution. The question is, can Congo, because it's got boots on the ground, if you would, around the world, those committees, can they in turn actually come up with action plans? How to improve literacy, how to reduce hunger, how to reduce inequalities, all the different uh, goals, if you would, of the UN, the SDGs or the SDG targets. So at any rate, this is a third opportunity for us. If we can be effective in creating tools that enable associations like Congo to facilitate its committees in coming up with effective action plans to actually do things on the ground and make a difference, that would enhance the image of Congo within the UN. Because right now, the UN is not looking so favorably at civil society as it maybe was intended several decades ago, because they're looking and saying, you guys, you civil society, you just keep coming in here and you try to tell us what to do, but you're not helping to contribute to solving the problems that have been identified. So if we can come up with a way that makes it easier for the NGOs, who are also, I mean, they're there because they want change to take place in the world. And if we can make it easier for them to be more effective, then that is going to enhance the position of not only Congo within the UN, not only civil society, but it's actually going to be adding value, not just to those committees, but it's going to add value to the UN. Because right now the UN has a major image problem that so many countries and people are looking and saying the UN's not effective. It's not accomplishing things. It's not stopping wars. It's not achieving the SDGs. So if we can help the civil society do more to accomplish the SDGs, that is going to boost the image of the UN, and it's going to boost the image of civil society, the standing of civil society within the UN. And at the same time, it's adding value to our entire world. So that is what we are seeing now as an opportunity to be able to play a role in creating a framework that will enable the Conference of NGOs at the UN to be more impactful, and therefore be of more value to its members, attract a larger share of civil society to their efforts because they're accomplishing more, and help them get more leverage at the UN, and so on. It turns out here, and I don't know if Stuart Martin's on the call right now. I don't see him. Okay, that we have a similar effort within Rotary to be able to say we have our areas of focus in Rotary, and we've got our Rotary action groups to see, can we do exactly the same thing? Can we go and help put together a framework, the same kind of a framework that would enable our areas of focus cadre to be more effective, to add value to Rotary, especially to those clubs that are particularly interested in a particular area of focus, so that they are able to be more impactful. For example, can we, in that centralized consolidated role, can we bring together more researchers, the more top scientists and researchers to study and analyze the problems, come up with solutions that then can be passed on to the individual clubs, so that it provides them access to much more expertise that than what they might have locally. It provides them access to supply chains that are way beyond what an individual club can do, can provide them access to training of local people. So if we sort of think about it, that within an area of focus, if we are able to come up with great ideas, put together projects, maybe 20 variations of a particular project or problem, like open defecation because of different soil types or different population densities and so forth. And local clubs can just sort of pick from proven solutions. This is going to greatly increase the success of our local clubs. So this is what the central function should be all about. The central functions should always be, how do we increase the success or maximize the success of our local clubs or NGOs or whatever? So we have the same basic type of a framework we're looking to do, both within the UN in Congo and within Rotary, through the Rotary action groups and through the areas of focus. So this is sort of a third leg that I think we just came to the realization in the last few weeks as we were invited to participate in the discussions with Congo. So I just want to sort of start off with that. And I'd like to hear, and perhaps His Excellency Dennis Antoine, based on your experiences in the UN and working at that level, including with the NGOs, what are your thoughts on putting something together that would enable Congo committees to be more effective in helping all of the entities on the ground be more successful in addressing the major problems? Your Excellency.
Bill, I think you have touched on the critical aspects. The issue is continuity. History does not stop. And therefore, intergenerational relay must stay in progress. There has to be an engaging movement intergenerationally. We have to look at the SDGs as the baton that must be carried to 2030 as an example of where we're going. To do that, we have had starters. We have had those who have framed the concept of the 17 goals and the 169 targets. But we need carriers. We need to pass it on intergenerationally, as I've mentioned. I tried to write about this matter to children, and I have Get on Board, Dear Children of the World, where I have written, and the UN saw and made comments on my work, where I have invited children from all demographics, all over the world, to get on board. That means we have to teach generation after generation, what is this SDG? The 15-year cycle is almost over. I mean, 4.5 more years, 5 years left. And you have mentioned very correctly that there are so many deficits in accomplishing the goals. But we need carriers. We need people like you, Bill, who have the determination to keep on presenting the need for collaboration. This goal number 17, partnership, and not just partnership, but trusted partnership. Partnership that can deliver. You talk a lot about Rotary. Now, another word for Rotary should be service. You could just leave out the word Rotary and say service. So we need servers. We need servant leaders. We need people who are not in it for their personal aggrandizement, but for passing on. What are we doing? The young people who were in high school, who are now in colleges 11 years ago, they must be bearers. They must be carriers of that baton, which is the SDGs. So we can't go any further without total intergenerational engagement. And the UN must not be spoken of different from member states. The state of the UN is the state of member states. What's happening at the UN now reflects the challenge in every member state. So the global consensus that brought us together under the SDGs has dwindled. In other words, that consensus has weakened because we do not have what is called transitioning, sustained efforts. So I'm very pleased, and I want to say this to you, Bill, your sustained effort is remarkable. And I'm glad that I have been listening and paying attention. When we drafted this SDGs, it was night and day struggle. And we got something. There is something in the SDGs that says that local, global, local. Anything that's happening where you are is happening where another person. So we can't keep talking about civil society. What is civil? Civil society is the citizenry of our world. And so we must begin to say, hey, have we brought in the teachers? Have we brought in all the world's a stage? All the world's a stage. And here it is. Here it is. We are all actors. And if we play our part, if we star in our role, the UN becomes an award-winning stage. So we have to recognize that each of us has a role to play, and we have to stick with it. So I thank you, Bill, for your efforts, and Rotary for the persistence in bringing attention to the need for collaboration and partnerships. I would stop rambling.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Yes, it's the UN. I think people don't realize that the UN is just not some body that just exists over there. It's something we really need. We need some kind of an institution where we can come together to jointly address the major problems facing the world. We began with a very concrete major problem. We don't want any more war. But it goes beyond that, and the UN has expanded its role over the decades to realize that, hey, this is the place where the world, jointly comes together to figure out how do we address the major problems facing our world. And initially we saw war, but increasingly we see other things. There are pandemics. There is climate change. These are global problems that could be existential to our continued existence. Now we're seeing the same thing with artificial intelligence, that there are many experts out there that now say that we have a 20% or even greater chance that AI could exterminate humankind. And we're not talking decades. We're potentially talking here in the next 5 to 10 years. So this is the kind of thing where, hey, we've got to figure out how do we come together as a world and address that, because an extreme breakthrough in artificial intelligence could happen in many different parts of the world. So we need to figure out, how do we support this? This United Nations is not just something sitting over there. This is our supreme area for us to be addressing at the highest level these major problems. But at the same, yes.
Bill, if I may, I think you're touching on a critical topic here. And what I feel is quite important is each of us, we have to appoint ourselves UN envoys. We have to deploy. We understand the mission and vision and goals of the United Nations. Many of us who meet, as you have been doing over the years, have an understanding of the goals and vision and mission. So we have to be self-appointed UN envoys and be messengers, get out into the villages and into the neighborhoods, because we have to take the UN to the communities, take the UN to the villages. We cannot speak, just, about the UN as if it is some kind of a theory. It is a functional, coming together. So the goals that are formulated at the UN must be disseminated, must be deployed, must be sent out, must be translated. It has to be. It's almost letting the citizens of the world know that here is what we have agreed on, and we each must play our role in the part of the world in which we are.
Yes, and there's efforts in that direction. We have education for sustainable development within UNESCO that has, I think it's representatives from 150 countries right now out of the 193 in the world that have committed to trying to get a SDG put into the curriculum of every country in the world. And we would, if I hadn't made this change to focus on how we can help the gain more support for the UN through this civil society, we would have been talking this weekend about a project that would include encouraging every school in the world to incorporate SDG education as part of a global competition among secondary schools worldwide. But more about that in the next couple of weeks. But one of the key things that we found when we were looking at what is happening with the SDGs in the world is we can find almost no plans where somebody is saying, we have a project, and the goal of our project is to improve the global situation with regarding some SDG. In other words, we look at the UN and we say, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you creating these improvements and so forth? But we're not getting behind. We're not seeing the real support on the ground for this. And we spend, the estimates are between $1.5 and $2.5 trillion with a T, $trillion a year, every year, on SDG related issues. But almost all of that money and all of those efforts go to helping the victims of the consequences of the problems. We're not addressing the problems because the problems are difficult. So we don't know, how do we do that? And so, I visit a lot of Rotary clubs, or I used to visit a lot of Rotary clubs. And I would always ask the question, how many of you have raised $1 million for a cause? And nobody ever raised their hands. And then I would ask, okay, how many of you have tried to raise $1 million? No hands go up. I ask, how many of you have given serious thought as to how you might raise $1 million for a cause? And no hands go up. And my conclusion is, if you've never tried and you've never even given serious thought as to how you might, how do you know you can't? But it's human nature that if we doubt our ability to do something, we don't try, we don't start. And so the thing that we've got to do is we need to help groups to be like our club, dare to be great, dare to take on the problems that you don't know the answers to. Thomas Edison, who's considered a great inventor, in his time, he was considered by many, especially in the scientific field, as a failure, because the great majority of all the experiments that he tried failed. But his point was, no, those aren't failures. I'm just eliminating the options that are not correct, that aren't going to succeed, take me to the correct solution. But many people, we educate our young people that mistakes are bad, that you should avoid making mistakes whenever you can. So we raise a risk-averse society. And we need to go and realize or find ways to encourage people to dare to take on the problems that we don't know how to solve yet. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple Computer, there's a famous quote, those who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. At one point, we asked a whole bunch of young people, we said, why do you think he said that? What do you think he was thinking? And after a while, they came to a conclusion that, well, that's because only those who think they can try. And only those who try can succeed. So we've got to get people to believe enough in their chances that they're going to try. Another example was in the time of Hurricane Katrina that really caused humongous damage, the worst damage of any storm in the United States history in New Orleans. And I think it was 2007. A 10-year-old girl in Iowa heard about the hurricane and saw the images on TV of all the people suffering. And she decided something needed to be done about that. She's only 10 years old, but she got a bunch of 10-year-old friends together, and they decided that they were going to raise money for the victims of Katrina. And they set a goal to raise $1 million, 2007 money, $1 million. And almost everybody was going, yeah, 10-year-olds. We know about 10-year-olds. They're crazy. And these kids said, no, we're going to do it. We're going to do it by this date. Well, the date came and went, and they didn't raise $1 million. They raised $10 million. And all of a sudden, she's on all the talk shows on TV, and everybody's asking her all kinds of questions about how they did it and whatnot. And her answer was, what's all the fuss about? Any random kid could have done it. You just got to try. So she went home. She raised $10 million again to prove her point for other causes. So the bottom line is we just need an awful lot more people trying. So if we can help Congo structure its committees, get its committees, so its committees are willing to commit to organizing action, because let's face it, they are representing the great masses of the civilian population on the ground around the world, so that they take it upon themselves to say, okay, how can we facilitate the achievements of these particular goals? Let's just take, for example, that they establish a committee for each of the 169 Sustainable Development Goals. So maybe one goal is, how are we going to close the early childhood development gap? Okay, and so and everywhere in the world. So the members of the committee are committing to find ways to find and implement ways to reduce the development gap, the early childhood development gap around the world. And so they're now focused when they're having their meetings. So the meetings don't become, oh, that was a great meeting, see you next time. That's the end of it. But that we end up here with concrete plans. Those plans might be, let's organize a research team to research this aspect of the problem. Let's go and provide incentives for the development of some piece of equipment or whatnot that could contribute to resolving that problem. Or let's organize an awareness or information campaign in these parts of the world, in these languages, to make people aware of opportunities that they can do to fix their problems. So AI can play a major role, because right now you've got big NGOs and little NGOs and that are coming together in these meetings, and many of them don't have the access to the information or whatnot to always participate. But we can create knowledge bases on each of these problem areas, provide the educational tools that will enable any of the members of the committees to pull any information about the problem that their committee is dedicated to resolve at any level of detail. So an organization with 3 members can get as information as one with 10,000 members. And they can then participate in effectively in the decision making or brainstorming on how they can address that particular problem. AI can also help, obviously, with the brainstorming. AI can help with bringing the connections to people that they need to connect with anywhere in the world. So that these providing these kinds of tools can raise the expectations. What do we expect from these committees? It can maybe switch the whole thing around. So instead of the committee, the Congo committee saying, okay, our job is we want to advise the UN on what they should be doing, to one where the UN representatives or the member state representatives are coming to advise Congo committees on what the situation is in their particular part of the world, so that they can help facilitate the achievement of the goals. So Rotary is an organization, we're a service organization, and very often we say, service above self, and it's great, but what we're measuring typically is what we're doing. We're measuring the input, how many hours Rotary volunteers are contributing to this or that, but we're not measuring achievement. We're not measuring the results. But if we can go and create an environment where people become more used to measuring the results and the achievements, both within the NGOs in general, and let's face it, Rotary is just a very specific type of an NGO, that this is a way that our little club can have a major impact. So let me hear from others. Some others of you, if you want to comment on this thought, that if we can create tools that will enable, for example, a Congo committee or a Rotary Area of Focus committee to be of more value to helping our clubs, to helping the boots on the ground of all the NGOs become more successful in implementing or achieving the goals of the world, the SDGs, in their particular area of the world. What are your thoughts on how valuable that might be, and how realistic is it to think that we can provide tools that would support that within Rotary International or within Congo to be able to achieve that? Thoughts, please.
Hey, Bill, your story of that 10-year-old girl reminded me of when I was watching a movie about Vincent van Gogh. Uh, he mentioned in his movie that normal people don't really create much. They don't bring about big change. Only the eccentric people are the one who go out and do big things. So they achieve stuff. So I guess this group and your leadership it has that potential, being crazy and dare to dream to be uh, dare big things. And yeah, I agree with your thoughts about the Congo, that we can play a big role in maybe advising them or directing them in a gentle way. So, but one of the things what needs to be done is about we need to monitor the money flow. You're talking about $1 trillion dollars being spent every year, and it's still there's nothing to show for. So where is this money coming from? Where is it going? Uh, so that will be an interesting project.
Yes, I think it's interesting that I don't want to say that there's corruption. I'm sure there is some, but I don't want to imply that that corruption is taking most of that money. Although there is a study that showed in one Western African country, they did track a lot of the money that was flowing in, and they found that of every dollar that was headed towards that particular country, only 7 cents actually made it to the ground where the issue was being addressed. But let's forget that for a moment and just assume it's getting where it's needed. Again, look at Venezuela right now. You've got from, I think the last I heard, more than 50 countries have sent rescue groups and large rescue groups, because we're looking, there's 50,000 people missing
Yeah.
in Venezuela right now due to the earthquakes. And so this is costing a huge amount of money. The problem is it's not doing anything to address the problems. It's not doing anything to say, oh, they should build earthquake resistant buildings, because that was one of the things that came out, that there had been a law, but it had gotten relaxed. So almost all of the high-rise buildings that were involved did not have the construction that could have reduced the amount of damage. So this is something that's really important that we have to realize, because it's hard. I often bring out the example that you're on a mission. You were sent to get medications, and you're carrying medications back to a village where there's 100 children that are on the verge of death if they don't get that medication. And you've got 100 doses with you, and along the way, you come to a child that is dying, but they would need 4 or 5 doses to keep them alive. What do? Do you give that child the 4 to 5 doses, and then when you get to your destination, you're sort of asked to pick, okay, you pick out the 5 that are now going to die because you gave away those doses. So,
Mhm.
it's not that it's easy, but the preventative measures that we undertake today, they will impact if there's 100,000 people a year dying because of some cause. And we would have to take the money or half the money for 1 year for several years to do the preventative, address the cause. Over a period of 5 or 10 years, there are far fewer people that would be suffer if we solve the cause. But it's a hard thing to do, and this is why certain kinds of leadership are difficult, where you have to make a choice, and you're not making the choice of do we paint it green or do we paint it blue? You're making choices that affect people's lives, and to go and say, okay, we're going to devote the resources here, knowing that certain other people are not going to survive. Triage nurses in military field hospitals or in emergency centers, they live with that. They live with that. They know sometimes they have to allow somebody to die that possibly could have been saved, but they would have taken so many resources that several other people would have died.
Mm.
So it's a tough decision. Jerica, yes,
Yeah.
please.
Hi, yes, I just wanted, as we are this collective of business and civic leaders, and our contribution absolutely comes from our expertise in industry, I would really love to hear some comments from Ashok, if you could.
Mhm. Yes, Ashok, please.
Well, your timing is impeccable. I will start with health as a bridge to peace and sustainable development through education and technology. That's my hypothesis for the art of living in perpetual beta. I also honor this group and the dedication and the values that you've brought together and reinforce. And I don't have have a problem with spending the first 10 minutes of every meeting recapping why we exist, because it is important to make sure people are clear that this is effort, it is complex, and the scale is global. For His Excellency's comment about intergenerational continuity, I am committed until the end of my time to help break the code or advance the influence of this type of group and this type of collaborative peace gaming as we go forward. So it does take a little time. I'd say minimum of 3 months. With AI, maybe 6 weeks to learn the complex structure and where in the gaps we can influence. And also, as His Excellency recommended, and I would be very curious if you could come up with an invitation that's a formal letter that I can pass along to my boss that says why I should be considered as an informal envoy for disaster diplomacy. And if it can come with a little seal from this group and the blessings of whoever is supposed to be at the UN agency, it would really help me convince in a very, hopefully, free and generous way the relevance of this group to the work in healthcare. Mayo, I think it goes all directions. Mayo is a digital platform, has a lot of influencers, and we do our work through practice education, research, and innovation. And it's at each level we have to have an expert combined with an administrator, because the complexity and the ask for making a business case of something that I take as a spiritual practice is in the art of how we collaborate and how we humanize, or at least maintain our human condition. And maybe the last item, so the last call, Bill, is what Eugen put together as a manifesto. I think this group should either review it all in detail and then endorse it, so that we can have a rules of engagement and some sort of operating playbook for effective implementable solutions at scale. And I just also invite you, I'm an executive fellow for the Digital Economist this year. And on July 16th, I've been asked to moderate a session on the way that AI can be used for safe, responsible, and sustainable healthcare solutions worldwide. And that group, since 2019, where I also participated in World Economic Forum and the UN Civil Society program in Salt Lake City, You are absolutely right that people just need to get engaged, and whatever their gifts are, if they can share it in a way that's altruistic and free, that will help collaboration a lot. And the trust has to be restored. And we just need to figure out, how do we maintain a psychologically safe space for people to learn emotional self-regulation so that they can constructively engage in dialogue. It's not a convincing people, but with AI now, the cyberbullying, the misinformation, disinformation, I don't think there's much trust at any level across the world. And people who think like myself, trying to be good doctors, we are also facing imposter syndrome and burnout, because the things that are being expected of us to respond to for free, and I don't want to diminish the time it takes to be a good subject matter expert, but there is a cost to education, and however we want to evaluate and monetize and tokenize and democratize education, we do need to have intentionality of the gifts that it takes to become neurodivergent and yet communicative. Um, I'm glad this is being recorded, because I couldn't say all that again in any right sequence, but thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ashok. One thing I want to really highlight here is that if we're familiar with the concept of meta-organization, meta-structures, we're not the ones that say, okay, in our meetings here, okay, let's address open defecation this week. We're going to solve it. Let's address the problem of pandemics next week. We're going to solve it. We seek to be the facilitators, or the ones that are encouraging or enabling the others to do their jobs. So when we look here at the Congo sees itself as the facilitator of the interface or interaction between civil society and the United Nations. So we seek to help them be more effective in it. We seek to help them be able to add value to what they are doing. Until now, because they don't have necessarily tools, all they can do is they meet a couple of times a year. They pass some resolutions on things, and they say to the committee members, okay, you guys have to submit reports every time you meet, and things like that. But they're not able to come out and say, oh, hey, guess what? We've developed a set of tools that is going to help you committees be more effective in addressing whatever the image that your committee is focused on. And this is where we are trying to help. We're trying to help to be able to help them provide the tools that will add the value to what their committees are doing. Because if their committees are able to point to more success, there's going to be more civil society willing to join those efforts, because they say these are accomplishing something, these are doing something. It's the same with Rotary. If we can help Rotary International provide tools that increase the success of the individual clubs on the ground, that's going to attract more people locally to that club, because the club's accomplishing more. But it's also going to increase the willingness of those clubs to contribute, to interact with the central offices, because the central offices are providing them value. I was the membership chair of our district many years ago. When I traveled around and visited all the clubs, and I heard one of the largest clubs in our district, where in the meeting, they were discussing, what's Rotary do for us? We go and send our dues in, we send contributions to the Rotary Foundation, and Rotary comes back and saying, you guys should go out and do some good, or you guys should go out and increase your membership. But they're not doing anything to help us do that. There's no information campaign, ad campaign being done at the global level that would make it easier for us to get our story out. They tell us, go use social media, go get your word out, go tell the story. They don't take a look and say, okay, Is that the problem? Is the problem that people don't know about Rotary? How come is it then that Rotary loses as many, almost all new members quit Rotary within 2 to 3 years? Why? Those people know what we do. If it was about people not knowing what we do, why did they leave once they know what we do? So it has to be about what we're doing or what we're not doing. So this is something here where Rotary has to look and say, how do we add value? How do we add value to our clubs? How do we do things that are going to increase the success of our clubs? Because the success of Rotary is the cumulative success of all the individual clubs. So this is why the opportunity for our club comes about when we can come up and find ways to help Rotary International increase the value added that it provides to the entire network. This is where our club can help provide tools to Congo so that they can help add value to the success of their committees and help their committees be more successful in their goals. That is going to attract more NGOs to the efforts because they're seeing results. So that,
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so I was just going to say I was at Rotary International in Taipei 10 days ago, and then the three things that I took away that really compelled me to be proud of Rotary, as well as because there are many, many action groups and many, many fellowships. So I think whoever wants to get engaged, just pick one and stick with it for 2 to 3 years. So the Rotary Action Group for Peace is the one I spent time with since Melbourne. So Melbourne, Calgary, and this trip. And I grew in my awareness and my skill building at addressing peace and problems related to nonviolent communication. So there's just awareness of which action groups you want to sign up for, and then they were very willing to have you on board, no extra cost. The other group I connected to was the International Fellowship of Health Educators and Professionals, and again, the same thing. Then if you get that granular, you can then pick specific areas like cervical cancer screening or whatever you want to help. And then the invitation to hear Malala and the large, ambassadors for peace and Nobel systems thinking. I think you can make that right now with our group. Using AI, you can crowdsource any topic, any expertise, and we just need to have some other person then verify and trust the information that we curate. So your challenges for how do you spend $1 billion? What do you do for I did all that with ChatGPT and AI since January, and I sent a few of those items back your way just to remind us. And also just a reminder, as Dennis nicely mentioned, that if you don't come to each meeting and you don't stay as deep in connection, it's easy to miss the beat and get out of flow. So maybe there's another way from a website standpoint to have a searchable dialogue, and you can make a logic model for us on going forward. But that would need another FTE of somebody's time or skill set. But I think this group is super powerful and super connected, and we just have to hope and trust that we will attract people directly or indirectly into the sustainable goals as outlined.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yes, thank you, Ashok. And
I'm sorry, I have to get going.
Oh, okay.
I have to go to a funeral, so it just
Oh.
reminds me that we only have so much time in this planet, so use it well, and please keep breathing.
Condolences on the funeral that you're going to, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. Just very quick before you leave, fellowships and Rotary Action Groups, usually do have a membership fee,
Oh.
but it can be well worth it. But the real value comes because when we look back over the decades and we look at those individual Rotary Action groups and we ask what are the concrete measurable outcomes, and this is where we're weak, and this is where we can help. If we can help those Rotary Action groups, provide them with the knowledge bases and the tools so that they're not spending all their time like our club does, that we have to regurgitate always so much of the basic information. We can create those curated knowledge bases that are trustworthy, that make it possible for those groups from meeting to build on what they're doing and to actually target creating results. So
Yeah,
thank you
wonderful.
again for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, thanks. So, Jerica, I'll send you separately Danny's information for the music performance on Peace Day. And Your Excellency and Bill, if you could come up with a draft letter or something that says we are blessed as informal envoys, whatever that means, to the UN as an influencer, I'd be happy to share that with my boss.
Okay.
And thanks so much.
Very
Okay.
nice.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Ashok. Thank
Yeah,
you, Ashok.
bye-bye. Bye.
Okay, so as I was just mentioning, the opportunity for us that we are seeing right now is if we can help these associative bodies, the central functions of these groups, be able to increase the value added they can provide to their members or their chapters or whatever you want to call them, then that would be a significant contribution. And so it's not that we're doing it directly, we're trying to almost be like that influence of the influencers, that we are trying to be to facilitate some advantages to the facilitators, if you would. And just as a quick thought, when I got into the discussion here about, okay, what is the information? Because the first thing that was mentioned was, let's create the knowledge bases about the committee. So we have some committee out there. Let's go and make it about the committee and what the committee's doing and their meeting agendas and so forth and so on. But then the discussion came up, no, make it about the area of focus that they're focused on. Make it about the problem. So we take the core piece and it has all the knowledge of that problem area. And then we can have sub-elements that talk about meetings related to aspects of that. But if we don't keep the focus on the problem, or in the case of the SDG targets, if we don't keep the focus on the target, then we start wandering off on all other aspects related to the committee. It's really important that if we're serious that we want to address a particular problem or achieve a particular goal, we have to make sure that all the discussion stays focused on the goal. So the idea is to take something like Notebook LM, and by the way, for the first time, I'm considering moving to $100 a month subscription because they just added agent technology into the curated knowledge base aspect that so dramatically increases the value of the knowledge and the ability to do things, so that it will go out there and automatically daily or weekly or whatever you would say will go and do things, communicate things, gather up information. It's really pretty amazing what the functionality capabilities are. But if we start off taking for each one of the SDGs, go and create the curated knowledge base that has all the knowledge about that problem area, about all the attempts that have been taken to do something about it, of all the ideas, the brainstorming that's been done relative to that problem area, all of the obstacles people have encountered in trying to address those, the problem area in various parts of the world, so that then when they have the discussions are knowledgeable discussions. They don't have to keep rehashing everything, because the members can tune in and say, tell me exactly about this aspect of that problem area, because that's what we're going to be discussing tomorrow. For brainstorming, what are the options? What are the costs? What is needed? What do we need to be able to provide a cost-effective, this particular solution cost-effectively across the whole world, and so forth and so on. So I'd like to hear any thoughts about that idea of taking for each of the SDG targets and creating that kind of a knowledge base that goes out to everything. Who are all the players? Who are all the yaysayers and the naysayers and the champions, and so forth? If we could provide that, and then Congo could go and encourage all of the NGOs that have an interest in a particular SDG target, please join that committee. And they can join 10 committees if their interest area of that NGO addresses those 10 areas, join 10. But make sure that when you're in a particular meeting or talking about a particular problem, you focus on that problem, so that we, in the end of the day, we have solution ideas and viable implementation plans to address each of the problem areas. Comments on that, please. Perhaps, Your Excellency, you might want to start off the comment on that.
Bill, I sat here and I began to think about the classroom and the 193 or so member states of the world is the classroom, but there are special needs. They're all special needs students in the classroom. Each country has special needs. And it is the concept that an individual education plan has to be developed for each country, while at the same time, how do you attend to the country in need while you deal with the rest of the classroom? So there has to be different stages of engagement for each country. Each country requires its national plan, and the national plan would receive support based on where they are in their ability to absorb the ongoing development issues. We talked about AI. Is there an infrastructure? We talked about institution. Is there an infrastructure? So each country functions at a different, and that's why we talk about developing countries, developed countries, small countries, and so therein lies the fact that we need to have a plan understood for each country. There are projects that can be replicated, but they can't be replicated in all countries at the same scope and level. So that's where the expertise, and I go back again to the work that organizations, civil society institutions like Rotary are doing. You're clearly aware of where the need is in the Congo, where the need is in Australia, where the need is. And so the focus is on the special need area, while at the same time, you bring them along with the rest of the world. Leave no one behind. And leaving no one behind must recognize that everybody cannot move as swiftly as the other can. So there has to be support mechanisms. And that's where the agencies of the organization come in, and the civil society, benevolence, and all the different groups that are working to ensure that we bring up the others to speed. So it is not a very simple problem, but it is the civil society stakeholders who understand the process and are applying their skills to assist in bringing everybody along. Sustainable development it means we have to bring everybody along, not drag some forward and leave the rest behind. So here it is. That's where we need more expertise in the delivery of services, because right now we have to talk about AI and the impact on education, AI and the impact of instructions. So how are we going to transform or engaging in the process? We really have to look at this so carefully that we're not focusing only on those who are able and are ahead, and then we're giving aid. It's like giving charitable contribution. So you just feeding them where they are. You're not bringing them along. They become, I don't want to get negative, but it is very, very important that an individual development plan be identified by each country, and it's brought to the implementers, it brought to the attention of the stakeholders, so that we know where we're going in when we're going in country X or country Y.
I think here that perhaps there's a difference whether we're looking at it from the perspective of the member states, for example, at the UN, and where we're looking at it at civil society. Because one of the advantages, when we're looking at it from the member states, obviously they have to look at it from their government and from the perspective of their country. But when we're looking at it from the perspective of an NGO, for example, or somebody like Rotary, let's say we come up and say, oh, there's sanitation is a major problem. Open defecation is a major problem. We know the last statistic I heard, about 600,000 children a year die from the consequences of open defecation, mostly in South Asia and Africa. There's different solutions needed depending on the soil conditions, depending on the population densities, and so forth. Yes, there's different solutions needed, but they're not necessarily by country, by member state. So if, let's say we had an area of focus within Rotary that came out and they developed the 20 solutions variations that serve almost 99% of all the people on the ground around the world, and they set up the supply chains to be able to provide the materials, the training plans, the consultative services, because not every Rotary Club has the expertise on the ground. They may not have the resources, and definitely don't have the resources if they're spending them individually and have to pay for the one-off costs that would be necessary. So if we had that, then the local Rotary Club could just go and say, okay, which of the conditions, yes, we have an open defecation problem in our club area, which of the solutions would work for us based on soil type, population density, and so forth, and culture. We can then plug in to the existing solution, be able to, a really tiny fraction of the cost, be able to get the materials, to get the know-how, to implement the solution locally, and so forth. And that could be going on. We got 46,000 locations around the world. There could literally be tens of thousands of locations that are all addressing open defecation, slightly different solutions and whatnot, but at a tiny fraction, maybe 10% of what it would cost. Now, what that means is that 90% of those clubs that didn't have the expertise that would have passed that solution by and not addressed that solution because they say, we don't know how, we don't have the means, or whatever, are now able to go and address that problem. So this is what we see of the need to have somebody saying, hey, we accept responsibility, or a responsibility, or it's our mission goal to resolve open defecation worldwide. Because it's also a question here of going and saying that right now, if we look at almost any problem around the world, one of the other reasons we're not addressing the SDGs is because we see these millions of projects being undertaken. It's an estimated 5 million projects each year are undertaken to address the problems related to the SDGs. As I said, almost all of them are focused on the victims and the consequences, not the causes. But still, we've got 5 million projects that are being undertaken. But if you look at any category of problem in each year, even where we have successful solutions, there's only 2 or 3% of the communities around the world that are addressing that particular problem. So if we see, for example, in Africa with boreholes, there are more boreholes failing every year than are being developed new or repaired every year, because we're only a handful of communities are addressing that problem this year because it's too expensive when you go and do everything as a one-off. Think of it here of McDonald's hamburgers, where they've got tens of thousands of restaurants in their chain. If they want to make a TV ad, they make a TV ad and then they play it here 100,000 times. If I'm a local restaurant that wants a TV ad, I have to pay 10,000 times the cost to develop that TV ad. So it becomes prohibitive for me. So this is one way a central function can provide value to its member elements on the ground. It's not to say that they're always the same. If I go to a McDonald's in France, I'm going to get a different menu than if I go to McDonald's in Hong Kong. Some elements might be the same, but some are relative to that market. So I think what we're looking at here is we need people to say, this is the goal. We're focused on this goal. We're not focused on 20 goals that are related. We're focused on this goal. We're going to talk about this goal and what we can do about this goal. And then maybe next week, once we've resolved that goal, we can talk about another goal. But the idea is also to be able to go and say in our committee, our goal is to solve the problem, not just talk about it. Our goal is to solve the problem. And that we come up with tools that facilitate, that help them to be able to come to conclusions that solve the problem, to come to actions that solve the problem. We want to help them be able to do that, whether that's overcoming political issues, cultural issues, physical issues. It doesn't make any difference. When we define the goals have to be based on the needs, whatever the need is. The need doesn't go away because we decide to ignore it. So the idea here is to be able to create tools that enable people to understand the problems, the opportunities, the obstacles, and with the concrete mission of coming up with implementable solutions and then implementing them. That's what we're looking at. Final thought on this too, when we look at the idea that you mentioned, special needs, that different countries have different special needs. They do, but very often, even in the classroom where you have students with special needs, those special needs usually only encompass some percent of what a particular child is facing. It's not 100%. So there might be 80% that can be dealt with in a common fashion, and then we need to have special care for the 20%. One of the big mistakes we make, especially in civil society, is we say that until we can come up with an answer that serves 100% of the people, we're not going to move forward. And as a result, what we very often see is that the global community that we're trying to deal with loses ground every year because we keep waiting. We're saying, well, we have a solution that would help 80% of the people, but until we can figure out how we're going to add those last 20% in, we won't start. What we really need to be doing here is, as soon as we have solutions that will move things forward for a significant share of the population of the problem, we should move forward on that and then continue on. Because otherwise that's where parties start to lose faith in us that, hey, you guys what have you accomplished in the last 5 years? What have you accomplished in the last 10 years? It's one of the things I ask at Rotary conventions. I go around, I ask people here, what problems are closer to resolution? What global problems are closer to resolution today due to the millions of projects Rotary has undertaken in the last several decades? The only thing anybody ever mentions is polio. And I say, well, beyond polio, because polio never, even at its highest point, never represented more than some fraction of 1% of the world's problems. So what else? And people, they can't think of anything. But if we could create a situation, we need to be more conscious of the need that we undertake projects and efforts that afterwards we're going to be able to show we made progress. We accomplished something. And this gets back to the challenge that I said about Rotary in the beginning. We measure the inputs. We measure how many hours. We measure how many dollars were donated to do good. But we're not measuring what have we accomplished. And this gets down to when we set our goals. Did we set our goals to be accomplishments, or did we set our goals to be inputs? If we start off saying our goal is this achievement, And we have to be careful that we don't water down the goal to what we think we can achieve. The goal is the goal, the need's the need. And once we go and we set that goal at the need, and we say, we're going to work on it until we figure out a way to solve that problem and then accomplish something. Jerica, please. Oh, Jerica, you change your mind?
I'm sorry. Nope. I was muted. Before we move on, I would love just to open the floor. We haven't heard from Obed or Augustine if they're able. Alia, if you're able to chime in.
Yes, please.
Just before we move on.
I think it's important to remember that the people that work on the ground in these countries are the actual experts in what their country needs. So I don't think we should be imposing our beliefs and our solutions on them. We should really go to the people on the ground and say, how do you feel about these issues? How do you feel they can be best ameliorated? That's my personal opinion.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up earlier, because studies show that is absolutely not the case in almost all cases. The people on the ground, very often the problem is they know what they know, but they don't know what they don't know. And as a result, the expertise is limited to their knowledge level. And so time after time after time, we see that the solutions that they target, the goals that they set, are based on global standards, if you would. The goals that they're achieving are substandard just because they didn't know that they could have achieved a different goal. So there's just study after study that show that that's one of the biggest problems with grassroots. And Rotary, we see that within Rotary, that so often here that a local Rotary club does not undertake a particular kind of project simply because none of the members of that particular club have any knowledge or expertise in that area. And therefore that they pick solutions. It's human nature to pick solutions that you know how to achieve. It's very rare people that go out and say, I'm looking for problems that I don't know the answers for. And then I'm going to start researching and looking for those. But if you can afford to, we have to think about it in a different way. Instead of thinking that the central is dictating to the ground, this is what you need to do. We need to think of it as the local entities pooling their resources so they can afford to hire expert consultants to advise them that where they don't necessarily have the knowledge. For many years, I used to consult to the very highest levels, the C level of corporations, major corporations, and even to some government agencies. And the interesting thing about it is that you would see the top CEOs, the top chief marketing officers, they hire consultants because they say, look, I want to know what I don't know. I want to know what my options are that I don't know about. And so we have to be very careful. We have to listen. The ground has to look at the solution and say, okay, do I need to adapt that to my situation? But also, it's like what I said with McDonald's. The McDonald's, they have to listen to the ground because they don't want to come out with a food menu that is not applicable to an area. They're just going to lose. Their goal is to maximize the success on the ground. So they've got to listen to what's going on the ground because they want to be successful there. But at the same time, they can't go and say to the people on the ground, hey, you guys need to go out and develop this particular food thing here because the ground doesn't have the expertise to be able to do that. They might not have the mechanisms to be able to do that. So the centralization is crucial to centralize where it makes sense to centralize. And yet we need to tie that together. We need to make sure that that central function always realizes that their only reason for existence is to maximize the success on the ground. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Augustine, do you want to perhaps say something. I don't know if we scared, Jerica, we scared some of the others away by saying they had to talk. Augustine.
Yes, Mr. Bill.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for today's conversation, for today's presentation, because I think this is the basic our needs for implementation for SDGs, because it seems for long times I have been thinking about the implementation and success of these goals, but for me it was very difficult to understand, because it was something like a statement, but the strategies of implementation within only 15 years to implement all sustainable developments, for me, it was very difficult to be achieved. Mm-hmm. So it was very difficult to be achieved because there was no any basic or clear strategies for its implementation. But now what you have said, according to what you have explained, and in this your presentation, it seems now United Nations have seen that has seen that there is a need to go underground to the grassroots, so as to look if those sustainable development can be implemented by organizations working at the grassroots, because it is impossible to sit somewhere and say that, for example, if you say one of the goal, you say that zero hunger. What do you mean with zero hunger? That is a goal. Zero hunger. Then what? Then how will it be that, like what is the strategy to implement it for whom one from? Yes, it is not. It is very difficult to understand. So thank you for this implement for this maybe for this idea we have come with from United Nations. I think we need to strategize on how this can be done, so as to make sure that we are going to succeed. But I don't know if they thought they discussed on how this can be implemented within only 3 years, because now we are going to the 2027. After 3 years, we will be to 2030, which is the end of sustainable development goals period. Mm-hmm. So, is this implementable within only three years, or they will increase the time of implementation from now, maybe for other period of time? So if they discuss about this, maybe you can tell us how this will be done. Mm-hmm. Another thing is for us in this group, I am very excited that you have presented in this group and to be discussed. So as I can see, we are only 60. We started with 10 persons. Now we are 6. So what is the measures can be taken to make sure? What is our responsibility and our part on this program? And if our part and the responsibility is the great, as we are saying there to be great, so what is the measures we are taking to make sure that maybe this process will be involved more than 10 persons, or even these 10 persons, how can it be involved in implementation of this program itself? Thank you, Mr. Beer. I submit.
Yeah, thank you. And this is something, it's a major thing Jarek and I have talked about here on membership, is how do we reach out and explain our story, because our story is different. I've attended Rotary clubs in different parts of the world, and one of the things is when I say, okay, set goals based on what's needed, not what you think you can do, or I point to the goals should be the causes, addressing the causes, not addressing the consequences. Because as I mentioned, within Rotary clubs, almost all the efforts are on helping the disadvantaged and helping the poor, or the victims of the issues. There's almost no effort going into addressing the causes of the problems. A couple of three conventions, Rotary conventions ago, I was going around and I was asking people, what share of your Rotary meetings are dedicated to strategic discussion of the major problems in your community? Because when I visit Rotary clubs, they usually have some speaker and there's a little bit of chit chatter going on about what the members are doing. A fellowship side is a lot going on in fellowship. And then when it comes to projects, okay, gee, what can we do? And this gets us down to saying, oh, okay, well, there's some people over here that need something. Maybe we can help them, or we have some volunteers that are helping in food banks or soup kitchens or whatever. But to go, I attended a meeting here this last March, about 300 Rotary Club presidents. And they went around the room and people were saying, oh, we have a major project to collect clothing in the winter for the homeless. And somebody else said, oh, we have a project to provide food for the hungry. And I said, well, okay, but and tutoring for our students that are not at grade level. But then I asked, okay, well, that's great, but by how much have you reduced homelessness? You're going and collecting clothing to help the homeless. By how much have you reduced homelessness in your community? If you're not undertaking efforts to reduce the homelessness in your community, you're really not doing anything about the problem, because next year you got to go out and collect the same amount of clothing again, maybe more, because you haven't done anything to reduce the number of homeless. Same thing with tutoring in the school. You say, oh, okay, well, we've got kids that are not at grade level, so we're providing tutoring. And I ask, well, by how much have you reduced the percentage of students in your schools that are below grade level? Oh, no, we can't do anything about that. Well, how do you know? What have you tried? So the issue here is, again, looking at what is the achievement, what is the goal? Is the goal how many pounds of clothing we provide for the homeless, or is the goal by how much we've reduced homelessness? And so this is a little bit on the thinking here that we try to get across, but it's one that a lot of Rotarians have problems with, because they can envision in their mind very easily how they would do tutoring, how they would collect clothing for the homeless. They can imagine that very easily. If I come and say, how are you going to reduce the homelessness in your community? They go, we don't know immediately. We'd have to really think a lot about that. And because they don't think they can, they don't try. When I asked that question of what percentage of the time does your club spend in strategic discussion about those problems, almost all the club leaders I talked to said, oh, our members leave their strategic hats at the door when they come into meetings. But hey, we're supposed to be the largest association of business and civic leaders in the world. How can we say, and we make such a big deal about that we provide our skills, that we donate our skills and competencies to improving the world. But how can we bring that in line with the idea that we leave our competencies at the door when we go into meetings? Okay, anyway, I'm way into too much depth into that. That's a challenge that we have to do. And I'm talking to some of the people at Rotary headquarters about the need for Rotary. Rotary will improve its image. Rotary will get a lot more members when the media and everybody is talking about the accomplishments of Rotary. If people see their Rotary clubs as community heroes, because look at what they are accomplishing for our community. right now, so many clubs, I forget what they call it, Romeo, was it retired old people attending lunch or something like that, eating out, the people associate Rotary with a bunch of people that get together for lunch. They're not associating Rotary with major accomplishments. But you're not going to get major accomplishments unless you aim at making major accomplishments. So to the degree Rotary says, hey, you know what? It's not up to us. It's up to you in the clubs. You got to each do your own thing. Does that mean here that if we know that there's 10,000 clubs out there that have open defecation as a problem in their club area, we're telling 10,000 clubs, go find an answer to open defecation. Go solve that problem. The idea is that we have to add that value. We have to come and find a way to assist all the clubs that have open defecation in their area to be able to have an implementable solution. We don't want 10,000 clubs redundantly studying the problem, rehashing the problem, doing the trial and error to find the mistake that what works and doesn't work. What we need to be able to do is have Rotary International be able to bring together the experts on the problem and the options, and on the infrastructure support that would help clubs on the ground be successful, and therefore add value to the mix. That's where Rotary adds the value. That's the pitch I'm trying to make to Rotary. Find a way to add value so that our clubs can become the heroes of their local community. Uma, I'm glad you could join us. Haven't seen you in a while. Do you want to just briefly introduce yourself?
Welcome.
I know. Thank you, everyone. Hi, everyone. Arshad from Karachi, Pakistan. I'm an educationist, and since very long time, I'm with Bill and attending his very precious and knowledgeable meetings. And throughout this journey since 2 years, I've learned a lot from Bill, and I think it is one of the best platforms we can ever have. Thank you so much.
Thank you for those words. But I keep talking about achievements, so this is one of the things here, and I'm really always dependent on Jerica to keep us focused on. And okay, we've talked. We've got to do here. So we could blame some of the things on COVID for a while, but we're really looking now to say, okay, how do we do things? And Huma, you weren't here in the beginning where I talked about that we've always seen ourselves, because we're a small group, to be the facilitators of think tanks, of bringing the world experts together to come up with good solutions, and being influencers to influence the people of influence around the world to implement those good solutions. But we're now adding in the idea of being a facilitator to organizing the facilitators, so that if we look at the Congo, the Conference for NGOs at the UN, or if we look at Rotary International headquarters, how can we assist them in providing value added to increase the success of all of the 46,000 Rotary clubs, or all the tens of thousands of Rotary clubs or NGOs around the world that work with the UN? How do we help those central bodies be more successful, those committees that they have be more successful in helping get the problem solved? So in the next couple of weeks, I've already had a meeting with the group in Congo that's working on coming up with tools based on artificial intelligence that could help. We just need to make sure that we're not only working on tools that are going to help the exchange of information, in other words, that are going to help NGOs communicate their demands or the advocacy that they have to the UN saying you should do this, but also going and working on how can we, civil society, how can we collectively help achieve the major problems, the goals of the world that are addressing the major problems before the consequences of those problems become very severe or potentially existential, because that would be the worst lack of service that we could provide to our community, is if we did not address the problems, or did not cause the problems of the world to be addressed before the consequences become very severe and potentially existential. Okay, so I had described earlier the idea that the committees, these committees of these various organizations, really need to be focused on the goals that they're aimed to achieve. And we suggested that the goals should be the SDG targets, the 169 SDG targets. If we had a committee for each one of those that is dedicated to saying, we are going to resolve this SDG target or achieve this SDG target for the whole world within an X amount of time frame. One of the things that was mentioned, and unfortunately just dropped off, is the idea of how quickly, because we've only got 3.5 years left before 2030, how quickly could we see results from what we're talking about? If we were to go and create and populate knowledge base using, let's say, the ultra version of a Notebook LM, which would allow us to provide a curated, trustworthy knowledge base of all information related to any particular problem, be it with regards to sanitation, or be it with regards to closing education gaps or early childhood development, or whatever it is. If we were to pull all the knowledge about what are the causes of the problem, the nature of the problem, the things that have been attempted, what's failed, what's worked, who are the stakeholders, who are the champions, who are the obstacles, or what are the obstacles, all that information together, and then have AI assist in laying out the structure to draw conclusions, and even to brainstorm, to assist in brainstorming how one could achieve that particular SDG target, and how it might differ from area to area. That if we could, if that was available, and we could get the various committees to establish actual plans, action plans for actions by all of civil society throughout the world on relative to their particular SDG target, with variations for the various situations that different countries are in. Because if we look at, for example, early childhood development, it's very different in developed countries than in developing countries. If we look at education, a simple thing like literacy, we see that in sub-Saharan Africa, many countries, it's in the high 80% of 10-year-olds are essentially illiterate. So they need a different kind of an approach to solution than perhaps in a developed country where you have only 40% that are illiterate at 10 years old. And now 40% for a developed country sounds large. That actually is the United States I'm talking about. Their own tests of a year ago showed that 40%, for the first time ever, of 10-year-olds, fourth graders, have not achieved even basic skill level, which means they're basically functionally illiterate.
Excuse me, Bill.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know I'm going to exit the meeting for a moment, get into a zone of Wi-Fi, and I'll be right back.
Okay, good.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so at any rate here, I think the whole problem we've got is that we don't have goals to have action plans that include, how do we sell the action plan? How do we cause the action plan to be being acted upon? That has to be part of the plan, because too often we have a solution, we describe a static solution, but then nobody knows how to actually get it off the ground to have action on it. And so when we look here at the fact that we're talking about civil society, the fact that we're talking about the representatives of civil society to the United Nations, that they should be able to go and say, okay, how are we going to do that? And that might be, hey, we've got to reach out to 10,000 NGOs that are not in consultative status to the UN, and we got to get them engaged. So how do you do that? That has to be part of the plan too, if that's something that's needed. Whatever's needed, we don't know what's needed. Everything is gonna have different needs. But if you've got a group that is dedicated to coming up with a solution that they believe can bring the desired result about, if we can get a committee where a committee is focused on those goals that are related to climate and say, that's our mission. We're not going to talk about the other 168 targets. We're going to talk about one of those targets that's related to climate change. And we're going to come up and figure out how do we actually cause something to happen. Not just go and say, government, you have to pass a law to do this. Because we've seen here that we've been fairly successful in getting governments to pass law and to change their budgets. But it's not changing things on the ground. I saw a report on, I don't want to mention the country, but it's a big country who went and changed the laws. They budgeted the amount that the UN, I think the UN calls for something like 3% or 3.5% of GDP be dedicated to education. And they passed the law and they put the budgeted money aside to be able to pay for that education, but they did not actually hand out the money. In other words, the money was sitting there on the side, ready to be used. They didn't hand it out. Next year, they allocated the same money over again. So they've been doing this now for a number of years. They are meeting all the UN goals. So the UN says that country is one of the good countries that has met their budgeting goal for education, but they never handed out the money. So what are we measuring? This is why we need to focus on measuring the outcomes, measuring the results. It doesn't make any difference on those things. But at any rate, the idea here is until somebody says our goal is to achieve these results, and we are going to apply ourselves to the achievement of those results, it's not going to happen. You can't hit what you don't aim for. So right now, you can't go around the world, try to find a project that says we are going to reduce the illiteracy down to less than whatever the SDG calls for. Actually, the SDG, maybe it's under the indicators, but the target doesn't actually specify a measurable result, if I recall correctly on that. So, but if we go and say that's the goal, they're going to have to come out with the action. Where's the actions that are going to do that? Where are the preliminary actions that are going to cause the actions that we need? So that is where we're looking to where we have this opportunity to work with Congo and with Rotary International to say, look, increase your value added. You've got to show us what is the value of being part of Congo. And the value of being part of Congo is not that you get a grounds pass badge and you're able to walk around the UN and attend meetings. That's not an achievement. Okay, if your goal that you're dedicated to is to achieve something with regards to hunger, achieve something with regards to inequality, okay, show us at the end of the year or 2 years or 3 years, where are you going to be? And what are the actions that are going to get you there? Okay, I see here that we are 9 minutes away from our 3-hour mark. Again, just to sort of summarize what this meeting was about, the recognition that the world needs, regardless of where it came from, the world needs bodies who accept as their mission the solving of the major problems that the world is facing, the causes of the problems. And we have the opportunity, if we can assist those bodies that are trying to facilitate the establishment of these groups to address the major world problems, that is an opportunity for us to influence the future development of the world. Yes, Jerica.
I just wanted to add as well, as we explore how we can help to organize civil society associations to more effectively add value and contribute to the success of the civil society collective and effectively addressing global problems threatening our world. If we could kind of do a little introspective observation of ourselves, our industries, our expertise, and utilize our Telegram thread to add on some ideas. And so that we can really maybe even curate that chat, much like a think tank amongst ourselves. I think that we have kind of reached a point to where these conversations can develop into action items. And I think everyone here is extremely accomplished and has a lot of value added. And we have a lot of potential to address these things in the space of urgency, because we don't have until 2064 and all of these forward markers as far as timelines for achievement. So I just wanted to interject that, because we are in a position of urgency. So it would be really nice to have everyone have their contributions put perhaps in the Telegram so we can all observe that thread. And I'm really thankful for today's conversation and everyone who participated in the conversation. I think that this was extremely valuable, not only to the group, but to the work that we have to do ahead. So thanks.
Yes, thank you, Jerica. Again, the key takeaway for today, I think, is that we are going to work. It's basically as a project, work on being able to perhaps use AI to influence these associative bodies of civil society on the one hand, of Rotary clubs on another hand, so that the central functions provide more value added to the bodies, the committees that are trying to solve the problems, that are committing to solve the problems. The danger for us a little bit with Congo is that the majority of members there are not necessarily interested in helping solve the problems. They are focused more on getting the United Nations to see things their way, to being able to influence the UN to support their position. So they see themselves primarily in an advocacy role rather than a problem-solving role. And what we have to do is try to encourage civil society to have some body, some group that will work together with the UN and work to enable the NGOs that are willing to work with the UN in trying to solve the problems. We need that. We need bodies that see their role as finding ways to maximize the success on the ground. And 3 years, I do believe if somebody came up with a concrete plan that included actions on the ground that were going to do something about illiteracy or education, we would be able to see a global impact in less than 2 years. For example, if we did our readathon campaign and called for every child in any school in the world to spend at least 40 minutes a day for 1 month, either reading or learning to read, that would dramatically improve literacy worldwide, because in so many parts of the world, the children, even into early teens, have not read 20 hours in their lives. And so this would have a dramatic impact on the decline on the percentage of literate young people in the world. So with that, does anybody want to make any final comments before I call this meeting to a close? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Uma. Oh, and we also have another initiative we're looking at with Rotary. Rotary has now put out the requirement that anybody putting in for a global grant, a major grant, has to, they have to provide a community needs assessment. They have to look at all the needs of their community and demonstrate that their community needs this project, because a major problem is that most of the projects that are submitted to Rotary is somebody in a Rotary Club meeting says, hey, we could do this. And so they come up with, they say, yeah, that would be something that would be useful. Let's come up with a project plan. but they have not done any opportunity cost. There may be something that could be done for half the price that would help twice as many people in their community. So the thing about it is, can we use artificial intelligence to make it easy to perform community needs assessments in communities all over the world, and then ask every Rotary Club, hey, go out there, we've got this tool. The tool will do the interviewing. And a dialogue interviewing with all the stakeholders in your community to understand what the needs are and why and how severe, how urgent, and so forth, so that the Rotary could end up with the largest inventory of world needs and be able to go and look to where is the best place to devote time to coming up with solutions to the problems that actually represent the greatest need in the world. Anyway, that's another, but they're all somewhat related. And take a look here, even if you're not going to go get the ultra version, take a look here at the latest updates to Notebook LM for the ultra plan, because they've baked in agent technology now into the knowledge base. So that you can just ask it, go do stuff, and it will do stuff. Especially it can go out there and keep all the knowledge in your knowledge base up to date. Or it can go out there and validate all the knowledge to be able to identify questionable knowledge that you've got in a knowledge base, or identify knowledge that would be useful to have that you don't have yet, that you need to look for. So that it's really amazing. Like I say, I'm this close to pushing the button on that to go to $100 a month. I think $100 a month. I can't afford that. Hey, I live on Social Security. So anyway, so I think here today we did get across some good points. I'm going to be putting the video of this into AI and seeing if I can come up with a very abbreviated summary of the key topics that we've discussed. Augustine, I'm glad to see you back, but we're just at the point of saying goodbye. But you're going to be able to watch the recording, or well, better even than the recording might be this short thing I'm going to try to get AI to do for me. So with that, I would like to thank everybody that stuck with us. And Sid, I know here you had expressed interest in being more active with us. I want to send you some information on some of the options of how you might be able to get more involved. I really have to apologize here for not following up sooner on that. It's just my plate's been somewhat full here for the last year, but I'm going to get you some information on that, and we would love to have your thinking in all the various things that we're looking to do. So thank you all. I hereby declare this meeting on 27 June 2026 to be closed. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, Bill.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye now. Thank you.
Everyone.
That's it.